Today's video, the 2003 Dream PC.
We review all technology from games to all PCs, and don't forget the toys. Don't get ancient electronics. We cover it all.
So before we get into this video proper, I need to address something quickly as I can, and that is period correctness, because I've got myself in a little bit of trouble in the past when I've done videos with period correct machines. So, oh, bless you, he's sneezing. So I just wanted to clarify my position on a machine when I say it's period correct, because there's different levels of careful. There's different levels of period correctness and how strict you can be. The strictness being, say, I'm making a 2003 computer. I want every single part to be manufactured within the year 2003. That's pretty strict. I generally don't do that. As long as it, and when I say manufacturing, I mean like a graphics card manufactured in the year 2003. If it came out in 2003, but it was manufactured in like 2004, that doesn't count. That's the strictest version of period correctness. I don't do that. Generally, I stick with the definition of it came out, if it was released in that year, then it counts. So if it was released in 2003, but it was manufactured in 2008, it still counts because it was released in 2003. That's my basis when I do a period correct build, but I can be a little bit lenient on some things. Generally a case, like if the case looks the part, I don't care when it was made as long as it kind of looks the part. Things like that, at least as far as hardware goes. Now, there's a couple things in here I just want to talk about right off the bat. This thing is pretty much 2003, like heart and soul, motherboard, video card, sound card, etc. There are a couple things in here. The hard drive is from 2004, just because that's what I had on hand. I didn't have a 2003 year hard drive around. But the performance of the drive in here and the capacity is going to be the same as if it was from 2003. Another thing is like the RAM. Now, the capacity of the RAM and the type of RAM was available in 2003, but as for the RAM in here, I don't know what year exactly it was manufactured. So that's how I'm a little bit lenient. I just wanted to get that out of the way. It's the same thing with this CD drive. I don't know what year. I actually didn't pull that thing out and see what year it's from. But it's just a DVD drive. They were quite available and ubiquitous in the year 2000, in the year 2003, and I don't think it's any kind of like weird speed that wasn't available. So there's my little possible exceptions. I also wanted to get out the way right off the bat with software. So drivers, I did not use period correct drivers from 2003. Just because I wanted to get like the best of these things came out in 2003, but maybe the drivers weren't quite there yet, so we're not really seeing their potential. So yeah, I'm using drivers in some cases that are a little bit later than 2003. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is Windows XP, but I am using Service Pack 3. Service Pack 3 came out after the year 2003. I'm just doing that for overall stability and to keep things consistent with my other XP machines if we want to benchmark against them, since they're also running Service Pack 3. But I don't think all of that stuff's really going to change things much. I mean, the drivers will, but this is we're still calling this 2003 Dream PC. If you have any issues with that, of course, comment in the comment section below, but that's how we're doing things. All right. Moving on, let's talk about this PC. So the first thing I want to talk about is the case. So this case is commonly known as the Pac-Man case. You can probably see why here. The little power button looks like Pac-Man, and then you have the reset button, the power LED, and the hard drive activity LED light, and they all kind of look like the pellets and Pac-Man is eating them. I do not know the story behind this case. I find it extremely hard to believe that that's a coincidence. I'm guessing someone in the design of this liked Pac-Man. I don't know if any of you guys know why they went with this weird like Pac-Man design, let me know. I don't see any like benefit to it. It would actually be more convenient and efficient if it was just a regular round button, but it works fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know. Apparently, a lot of people like to use these, at least what I've gathered from forums and message boards from the time. They like to put these in like MAME machines. It's because there's a Pac-Man button, I guess. Now, the case officially is a VTech ATX 3688 tower case. So that's the official designation of it. I'm not sure what year this case came out, but I actually think it's from 2003. I couldn't find anything official, but all of the forum posts about it, and like the post, it was from like when it was on Newegg, seemed to be about 2003, 2004. So this might actually be an authentic 2003 case. But overall, it's a nice case. I don't know anything. This is just a DVD drive. This is what was installed in it when I got the case. Very kind of minimalist setup I went with here. We don't really need much for our 2003 build. 1.44 megabyte floppy drive. These were already, obsolete by 2003, but I like to have them when I can. And then we have our DVD drive. I suppose if I wanted, I could throw in like another like a CD drive if I want, yeah, maybe I will down the road just to put it there, but like one of those caddies for the hard drive that are in these bays, and you can pull them out. But pretty nice case, pretty standard. We got two 3.5-inch bays and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.25-inch bays, and we also have this nice little push door, and it opens up, and you have two USB ports there, so that's nice. So if we look at the side of this case, it has been modified a little bit. The previous owner did this, not me, where they cut a hole and they added a little side fan. Not bad if you want my opinion. I did recently add these stickers here, little Pac-Man stickers, just to go along with the whole Pac-Man case theme. And I also did something else here. Let me show you real quick. So on the other side of this side panel here, I did add these two LED strips, and they are yellow light LED strips, so they're pretty powerful. So the yellow light pretty much permeates the whole inside of this case. So it comes out through this fan, it comes out through the vent holes here, and it comes out through the various vent holes in the back. There's a fan here. I was going to put a fan there, but I just don't have a fan to put in there. The only fan I have to put in there actually has like green LEDs on it, and I didn't want that to clash with the yellow. So I don't really think it needs that much cooling. So for right now, I'm just going to leave that fanless. But yeah, you get a nice, like, full yellow Pac-Man yellow glow from this case. So I thought that was just kind of like a neat touch to go with the whole Pac-Man theme. I'm in the dark, or mostly dark here, because I want to show you that lighting and how it works. I could have gone with a couple different lighting themes. I could have gone with like a purple light because of the purple PCI slots and stuff. But in the end, I thought yellow was a little different. So it's not like overpoweringly yellow, but it's still, yellowy. So you can see through the back here. So yeah, it's like I said, it's not like overpowering, but it's still a nice little touch in my opinion. So when I was considering setups for this 2003 Dream PC build, I did consider the AMD side of things. I did have this motherboard here. This is an N2U 400. It does use NVIDIA's GeForce 2 chipset. I believe it specifically uses the GeForce 2 Ultra 400. Very nice, fast chipset for the year 2003. This supports the AMD 3200 Plus, which was their high-end CPU for that year. But I did consider using a board like this too. But after reading different sources and watching different videos, it does seem that overall that Intel kind of had the edge in performance as far as the year 2003 goes with chipsets and CPUs. And from what I've seen, the top CPU from Intel, the 3.2 gigahertz Northwood with hyper-threading, it just outperformed even the 3200 Plus on a decent board. So that's another reason I did go with Intel for the 2003 Dream build, but I did consider the AMD side of things with a nice board like this. And this board, I think Phil did a review of this board. It's pretty well thought of, fairly fast board. It does cheap out, I think, on part of the chipset here, but in general, it's pretty decent. So this is the board I decided to go with, mostly for the reason of it's what I have, but it's a half decent board. So this is a Soyo Dragon 2. I kind of like the Dragon boards that were kind of around in the early 2000s that they did. They have some issues. I know a lot of them suffered from like really bad capacitors, and that seems to be a common problem with them, but I kind of like how generally they seem to be decent boards, but I also like they do like kind of wacky color schemes. Like their PCI slots will be a different color, or like the motherboard itself, some are like white motherboards. So I like the kind of non-standard color schemes these Dragon boards usually went with, but other than that, they tend to be like okay boards. Some are kind of high end. This one is actually pretty decent. I have the box. I don't know if the board was actually used, although I don't think this board is new old stock because, well, there's some things missing and open. But I don't know. The board in here may have never been used. But yeah, this is the Dragon 2. So this one supports the later Intels with Pentium 4s. So I think that might support just about all of the Pentiums, like the Prescotts, Northwoods. It supports hyper-threading too. It uses the Springdale chipset. So it does support hyper-threading, 800 megahertz front-side bus, dual DDR400. So I even think this supports the Extreme. So I think this supports the bulk of the Pentium 4 chips. We've got some serial ATI. We have, let's see, what's this? LAN, I don't really care too much about that. Some overclocking into the board. We've got AC 97. This is an AGP board. So we've got AGP times 8, which is nice, and then dual DDR400. And I do believe this board came out in 2003. So let's take a look at it. Sorry. Alright, so opening the box here, we've got SATA cable. We've got the backplate, which is really nice. We have the manual, which is also very nice. And then here's the board itself. Not too crazy, kind of a standard motherboard. But we do have purple PCI slots, which is wacky and zany, and purple RAM slots too. So I guess that's their wacky color scheme for the Dragon 2 board. As you can see here, our AGP slot still has the sticker on it. This AGP slot can support 1.5 volt AGP cards only. I think it's standard. Yeah, it's standard brown. Nice. That's a kind of a hefty heat sink there on the chipset. No CPU installed right now. The one downside of this is it can't take full advantage of Windows XP as far as, 4 gigabytes of RAM. This only can support 3 gigabytes. It's not a huge deal, but I guess that would have made it a more high-end board, I guess, if it had one more slot to support the full 4 gigabytes, even though due to video cards, we don't really ever see the full gigabytes being utilized. I believe these are, well, here's our floppy. I believe these are actually ATA 133, which is nice. And then we have, I just see two SATA 1 and 2 right there. Not a whole lot else to say about this. It does have the built-in audio USB, so not bad at all. The copyright in the manual is 2003, but I do believe this is a 2003 board. Okay, well, let's look at the key features real quick. Pentium 4 with and without hyperthreading, Northwood and Prescott and Celeron. Okay, I'm probably going to go with the Northwood for this build, though. Okay, looking over here at storage, it looks like it's only 100. It's not 133. I could have sworn it was 133, but it only goes up to 100 for the parallel ATA. Not a big deal at all. USB 2.0. There's that integrated sound. All right. Alright, let's take a quick look at hard drive choices here. I actually don't have any SATA hard drives from 2003, so we'll just go with a 2004 hard drive. I have two of them here that are SATA. This one's from Western Digital, and this one's from Seagate. These are 160 gigabyte drives. I know they believe the high end in 2003 was like 130 gigabytes, so I don't know if 160 byte drives in capacity existed in 2003, but one of these drives is close enough. This here is the processor we'll be using for our 2003 Dream build. Because our motherboard supports Intel processors, of course we're going to be using an Intel Pentium 4, and this should be the fastest Pentium 4 for 2003. It is a Northwood Pentium 4 running at 3.2 gigahertz. 2003, I don't believe the Prescotts, they didn't come out until 2004, I believe. So this CPU came out in about June 2003. 3.2 gigahertz, so this should be the fastest Pentium 4 for that year. So this CPU does support hyper-threading, has 512 KB of L2 cache, and it runs on the 800 megahertz front-side bus, which our motherboard does support. Alright, so let's install this guy and go from there. So if we look at the socket here, this is socket 478, you'll notice that is broken off there. I didn't notice that before. Maybe it just happened and I didn't notice it. But yeah, that is broken off, and you need that to kind of securely put on your heat sink and fan. So that's okay. So I'm going to be replacing this whole thing. It's pretty easy to replace. And I have this here. I got off eBay. It's kind of purple. It's not like as deep purple as these, but I think it matches it a little bit with the color theme. So I will be replacing this with the broken little, I don't know, a retention bar thingy with this one here. It seems pretty sturdy. I don't know if someone just like made this, like 3D printed this. It doesn't look it. It does look like it was like made in a mold or something, but it seems comparable in strength. So we'll just unscrew, I believe we just unscrew these 4 screws and then pop this out and put the other one on. So well, I'll see. I've never done this before, but I guess I'll find out in a second. Alright, well I guess this one actually came with these little push tabs. It didn't use the screws, so I just took off the back plate here, and it was easy. I just lined it up with the holes, and then you push the little tabs through. We've seen these before. I mean, I guess it's a little less secure than actually screwing it on, but I mean it seems to work just fine. I don't think this thing is going to be in any crazy environments where, you know, we need to have it screwed on, so this should work just fine. So I have to admit, when I was looking for a heatsink for this CPU, I thought it would be really easy and cheap to find like a really good third-party heatsink, but for some reason, socket 478 heatsink and fans on eBay tend to be a little pricier than I was expecting. I mean, they seem to be like 30 or 40 bucks for more generic ones, so I don't know. I was a little surprised for that. I guess that's normal, but the only one I had is this guy here, and as you can see, this is an all aluminum one. I really wanted one that had like at least a copper core, so I have this guy right here. I believe this is a stock Intel heatsink and fan. It does have a little copper core here. As you can see, it's all thin, whereas this one is just solid aluminum. So hopefully this one will fit, and it should work fine. That copper core should really help out, since I guess we're running, you know, a fairly fast Pentium 4. The Pentium 4s in general were kind of known for running pretty hot. The Northwoods weren't that bad. The Prescotts were really bad. So this should be adequate if it goes on and it works okay. And we'll be using decent thermal paste. I believe we'll be using either Arctic Silver or like MX4. Alright, so that's looking good. So now let's move on to RAM. So let's talk about RAM, or the memory we'll be using. So the Dragon 2 board does support up to 3 gigabytes, although I'm only going to use 2 gigabytes since that should be more than enough for that 2003-ish era. But primarily because the board does support dual channel memory with 2 gigabytes. If I put 3 gigabytes in, it won't support the dual channel, so I'd rather go with a gig less memory, but get the speed advantage of the dual channel, since I probably won't be playing any games on this machine from the time that really require 3 gigabytes of memory. So that's why I'm just going with 2 gigabytes here. I'm going with pretty much the fastest that this board can support. DDR, this is 400 megahertz DDR. These are dual 1 gigabyte sticks. I believe these Corsair Premium Series ones are pretty fast. Now I do have this one. It's also Corsair, and it looks pretty much identical. It is also a gigabyte stick, and it's also 400 megahertz DDR. I believe this one's a little faster too. It's marked CL2. I believe these ones might have a little bit slower timings. I don't really see a CL thing on here. I just see right here it's 3338. So I do believe these are slightly slower than this one, but I only have one of these and I have 2 of these, so these should be fast enough for this machine. This still should be faster than a lot of the generic RAM people were probably putting in their machines in 2003. Alright, so the board is now installed in the case. Our memory's installed, and according to the manual, if we want to get the dual channel support, we need to install it in A1 and B1, and not in there. If you do it in any other configuration than this right here, dual channel will not work. For our sound card, even though the Soyo Dragon 2 board does have built-in sound, I wanted to go with a discrete sound card. I usually always go with a discrete sound card when I can. Of course, for 2003, we're going to be going with the Sound Blaster Audigy 2 ZS. This is a very well thought of card. It's a very good sounding card for the time. I believe it did come out in 2003. It does have a copyright date of 2003. This sound card is generally seen as probably the best sound card you could put in a Windows 98 system. For 2003, as this would still be the top of the line sound card. It's still an excellent sound card for XP, early XP, so this should work just fine. I even have the little doggle for it to add a game port there if we wanted to use a controller. But yeah, the ZS, it's basically I don't know, maybe like a refinement of the Audigy 2 cards. So this would be like the end of the Audigy 2 cards, and then after this, I believe the X-Fi cards came out a few years later. There are different versions of the ZS. I think there's like a Platinum and a Platinum Pro. From what I've been reading, there really wasn't much difference between like the standard card and the Pro and the Platinum Pro. Basically, it was just bundle differences. Like the Platinum Pro came with like different software and games, and it had like a front input bezel and that you could install along with the card. But other than that, I believe they're pretty much the same. I've read a few sources also that said like there's slight differences in the sound quality. Like the Pro is like slightly has a better like sound to noise ratio or signal to noise ratio, but I can't really confirm that. But yeah, this is the card we'll be going with. This should be our top dog sound card for 2003. So for the video card, we're going to be going with the top dog for 2003. This is kind of a treat because I did not think I was going to get my hands on one of these cards. It's the Radeon 9800 XT. They're just really expensive, like several $100s on eBay. And the fact I found one for like half that price, boxed, and actually with an aftermarket fan on it is, well, I was pretty lucky. Of course, on the NVIDIA side, we had the NVIDIA FX series around this time, 2003. Not very well thought of, the NVIDIA FX series. Some of them aren't bad cards, and some of them make really good Windows 98 cards, but as far as like early XP and just for 2003 in general, I believe the Radeon card was seen as the top dog, just the better card for the time. Now, originally I was going to go with this guy. This is a 9800 Pro. Basically an overclocked 9700 Pro, still a very fast and capable card. Unfortunately, I found out later that this one gives like weird artifacts, so this one isn't quite running right, which isn't uncommon for these cards. They have kind of the same issues with heat as the 9700 Pro, and the stock cooler just isn't that great. So I don't know, maybe this can be fixed. I'm not sure, but anyways, this is what I was going to go with originally, and then thankfully I came across this guy for a good deal. 256 megabytes of DDR memory. This is the top of the line as far as 2003 and as far as the Radeon cards. So in the box we've got the standard stuff. Now this is the standard cooler that was on the card. So that's pretty cool that I got that as well. We've got the drivers right here, you know, the usual stuff, and you know, different cables and stuff here, but let's look at the card itself. And here we are with the Radeon 9800 XT, the king of 2003 as far as video cards go. As you can see here, it does have the aftermarket Zalman cooler on here, aluminum, but then it has like the copper line through it. This should be superior to the stock heatsink. It also has little heat sinks on all the little memory chips, which is nice. So yeah, this I'm really glad I was able to get a hold of this card here. We have 256 megabytes of DDR memory on board. We have a core clock speed of 412 megahertz and a memory speed of 365 megahertz. Now there is an OEM version of this that's slightly slower. I believe it's called the 9800 like XXL. It's very close to the speed of this, but a little bit slower. I've heard you can overclock those as well. They're a little bit easier to get, a little bit cheaper, but like I said, they are clocked lower, and overclocking results on those may vary. Just to compare this guy with the 9800 Pro real quick, yeah, the 9800 Pro has a core clock speed of 380, and the 9700 Pro has a core clock speed of 325. So this is a good bit faster than you know, the 9700 Pro, and still noticeably faster than the 9800 Pro. So this will be an interesting card. I have installed this on a board prior just to test it, and it seemed to run just fine. So yeah, we're gonna install this guy in our 2003 Dream build, and we're gonna play some games and see how she performs. Looking here on the front, we have, you know, 3 standard interfaces for the time. We have standard VGA, we have digital DVI. I kind of looks like S-Video at a glance. It might be S-Video, but it might be some kind of proprietary connector here where you connect a dongle. Let me check the book real quick. Alright, so that does indeed look like S-Video, although this card here, the orientation's a little different and it has a composite out. So I guess maybe there were variations on this card, but it does look like S-Video, so I think it actually is S-Video. And if you look right here, this card does require an extra, like a Molex connector to power it, so it does require that extra bit of power. And here we are with everything installed. Compared to some of the PC builds I do, this one's actually pretty minimalistic, despite the higher end parts for the time period. I'm not used to just seeing, you know, like a video card and a sound card. Usually I've got like a bunch of weird things in there, like physics cards and like extra graphics cards and all kind of weird, crazy things. So it's kind of weird just seeing 2 cards installed. Pretty simple, but for this build, that's really all we need. That's really all you need for most builds, to be honest. A good graphics card and a good sound card. There's our CPU installed nicely there. We've got our RAM. Everything's looking good. Now, one thing I could have done, I still might do in the future, I could replace this CD drive. It is IDE. There are 2 SATA connectors here. SATA. I have the hard drive connected via the SATA. I could put in like a SATA CD-ROM drive. I might do that in the future, but it's not super necessary. This seems to be working fine for now, so I'll just leave it that way. In the BIOS, there's even a way to like turn on like Right now I have it set to IDE plus SATA, so both are running, but you can set it to one or the other, or like a mixture of both. So that's pretty interesting. Replace the CMOS battery, so that's a new battery in there. And I did connect up the front USB connectors. Now you're probably thinking this is probably a good spot, well, of course oriented this way, for the Soyo Dragon case badge. And normally I would put it on there, but to be honest, this PC is just kind of for a fun build. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna like disassemble it, maybe sell the motherboard a little bit down the road here. So I don't really want to use this case badge if I'm not sure I'm gonna actually keep this PC around. Alright, here we go, and here's our initial splash scene for the Dragon 2 motherboard as we fire up our year 2003 Dream PC, booting into Windows XP. And before we run benchmarks and then games, I do want to show you a quick, my usual, we'll take a peek at, CPU-Z and all that good stuff. And here we can take a look at CPU-Z and just make sure everything looks good. Here's our CPU running at 3.2 gigahertz. Hyperthreading seems to be working, 1 core, 2 threads. So everything seems to check out here, just to double check and take a look at some of the other specs. Make sure everything looks okay. And then let's take a quick look here at Everest at our video card, just to make sure everything checks out good and it looks good. And just to note, I am using the Omega drivers for the 9800 XT. These are later drivers, they're not from 2003 as I stated earlier, but just to restate that. But these are recommended as the best drivers, very capable. I haven't had any problems with them. They seem to have like a lot of options for tweaking things, so they seem like pretty good drivers overall. We're going to start out here with 3D Mark 2001 SE. Keep in mind all of these benchmarks were ran 3 times and we took the average. I ran everything at 1024 by 768 with 32-bit color and everything else with default settings. This is also true with the gameplay that we'll look at later. So for 3D Mark 2001, we got a healthy 18,374 marks. So 18,374 marks for 3D Mark 2001 SE. For 3D Mark 03, we scored 6,803. So that is a 3D Mark score of 6,803. For the Comanche 4 benchmark with sound enabled, we got an average FPS of 65.9. Not a bad score considering this can be a kind of intense benchmark, so that's a pretty good score there. Alright, now let's take a look at the Doom 3 benchmark. We're going to be running it at high quality at 1024 by 768. If you see that weird blinking line at the bottom, just ignore it. That is not on the actual CRT screen I'm looking at. That looks like a kind of an artifact or error that came up as a product of the capturing process. So yeah, we got a average FPS with the Doom 3 benchmark of about 52.2, so that's quite respectable. We're not quite hitting a smooth 60 FPS, but that's still pretty good. And keep in mind, upping things like resolution and texture qualities, you're going to see that FPS drop most likely. And if you lower them, if you run it in something like 800 by 600, you're going to see the FPS go up. So it's really up to you what you want to go with. But remember, you can tweak if you want like a higher FPS or a lower FPS. But I think at the settings we picked, I think 52.2 average is pretty good for Doom 3. Alright, so now it's time to let's take a look at a handful of games here and check out some actual gameplay. And of course we're going to start off with Doom 3 from 2000.
medicine for you, buddy!
You want some?
Yeah, yeah! Are you hiding? Too easily.
Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. Of course.
I had to interject here real quick. I mean, the Chinese really love their military raids. Like, look at this woman here. She's like, yay, Type 88s, yay! Just, wow, that's enthusiasm.
Proceed with attack.
On the cause! Attack!
Another observation I want to make about this game specifically is it seems that it does have some sort of frame limiter or a cap. On a lot of these little like cut screens, the FPS seemed to hover around like 25, and then all during actual gameplay, no matter what was going on, it seemed to be about a steady 30 FPS. So I do think there's like a cap that it's not going above 30 FPS. But yeah, it did give me like a steady 30 throughout.
Them down. Release the flames. Throw them in the flames. Release the flames. Let loose the juice. Let us get closer. Hose them down.
Unit lost.
Release the flames. Maintain a smooth ride. Surround them in
Reach the weapons
flames.
storage facility, General. Destroy Unit lost. Any further delay attacks on our unit.
So that was our video on the 2003 Dream PC build. I hope you enjoyed it. I like this machine. It is pretty capable. You know, I don't know if it really fits. I mean, I have other machines that fit the niche for this PC. As I said earlier, it's just I came across the motherboard and I had the case, and I thought it would be neat to do a 2003 build. But I don't really have any particular attachment to that year or anything. But I might keep this guy around for a little bit. It's pretty neat, although it doesn't do anything that my Pentium 4 Extreme Edition XP build doesn't do. That machine doesn't do better than this one, but it still is a really cool machine. It would have been really, really nice for 2003. It was quite the powerhouse. It did really well in those games. The graphics card's quite a beast. That 9800 XT is quite a beast of a graphics card. I really like it. But if you guys have any questions, comments, do you have any memories of any of the components in here, please put them in the comments. I really like reading your comments, especially like old memories. I might not comment back, but I assure you I read everything. So please comment, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.